Yeah, so let's kick it off. So first of all, no worries. Attendance tonight. Attendance tonight was 10,960 for a gate of 1.08 million Canadian, 807,000 US. Fight of the night obviously goes to Cowboy and Iaquinta. Performance bonuses go to Walt Harris and Macy Chason. And in the 50-50 tonight, in support of the Center's Foundation and Project STEP, we raised a little over $30,000, so a great effort there. Mike, you have a question?
Yeah, so just back returning to Ottawa, you guys obviously did the bigger venue this time compared to the last time around. Just what did you make of the week and obviously how did you make it over?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, we had a target to beat the attendance from the TD Place Arena last time, and we did by, I don't know, maybe 400 or 500 people, which was great. We sold the venue kind of bottom up. We started opening sections in the 300 level over the last couple of days as we realized the demand was there. So, yeah, we're thrilled. We're thrilled. I mean, it's been 3 years since we were here, so it was time to come back. Very supported by the community. I think, the night had some ebbs and flows. Thank God for the Cowboy and Iaquinta fight. I mean, that fight was unbelievable. That second round of the Barrio and Sanchez fight, I thought, reached that kind of peak level of electricity as well. Tough third round, I guess, for Barrio. But yeah, good night all around.
Yeah, and then just talk a little bit about Cowboy. I mean, this guy, back at lightweight, doing amazing things, adding more wins records, bonus records, pretty much has them all at this point.
Yeah.
What's it mean to have a guy like this in your company, and how easy is it to just do fight cards like this and throw them in the main event? Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting thing. When that fight was booked, you had Hunter and Sean and Mick all like, well, we just can't wait for this to happen. Right, and so this was something that a lot of people were looking forward to internally in our organization. But this is kind of how fans got their money's worth. A guy like Cowboy, who's versatile, who's electric. I mean, the performance of the nights, I think he still holds a record. Now he'd be up to 8. Most wins, most appearances. I mean, he's one of those guys that we hope can stick around for a long time, but can pass the torch to someone at some point along the way, because you need guys who are durable and versatile and flexible, who will fight anywhere, will fight anyone. I mean, it sounds kind of cliche, but it means a lot. I mean, matchmaking and our event planning schedule is a pretty tough challenge. We're trying to fight the right people for the right cities and the right arenas, and he's a guy that'll step in anywhere and be a real crowd pleaser. You're no matchmaker, obviously, but Cowboy says maybe Conor McGregor, maybe turn around in July. Do you think maybe a title shot? Do you think one of those 3 are likely, or one of those 2? I mean, all bets are off. I got no idea. With Conor especially, just I think one sort of perspective of his is different one day than the next. We'll see. I mean, I know there's a lot of chatter about that. I think sometimes kind of falls in the category of where there's smoke, there's fire, and when things start percolating up and reaching to the mainstream and people start talking about it, there's a little credence to those types of rumors. I just got no idea what's in store for those guys. Last thing, 10 Canadians on the card tonight, mixed results, but that's the most we've had in a long time.
Yeah.
Event up here. What's your sense of the market right now? I mean, a lot of those fighters are making debuts and stuff. Like, do you see, maybe a tipping point happening where we're getting a lot of new talent in here from this country?
I think we're heading in the right direction. I think there's been a couple tough years. There's a few things that are working in our favor. I think number one is we're trying to strengthen ties with other Canadian martial arts promotions. That ensures that we've got a really healthy pipeline of athletes that are going to continue to come through up the ranks, get the experience they need prior to coming to the UFC, and can exhibit some pretty good showings once they get here. I thought a bunch of the matchups tonight were pretty close, right? Like Barrios' fight was pretty close. It kind of came down to that last takedown in the middle of the third. They had traded punches for the first couple minutes of the third, and it was pretty even at that point until Sanchez got the takedown. Number two is we're making a much more concerted effort to help promote, build our athletes. So our content strategy is changing. It's becoming a lot more elaborate around our athletes, and hopefully that gives them the exposure to build their own fan base. And then number three, you're seeing some of the regulatory changes shift. Talking to the Ontario Athletic Commission this week, I mean, they were saying they've got 4 times the events booked, MMA events booked in Ontario already for 2019 versus what they had in 2018. So I think everyone saw the details of the PC budget, proposed budget that they announced a couple weeks ago. That's obviously still got to pass. We don't know a lot of those details. But what it does mean is that we've got, the right building blocks are being put into place to ensure that there's a healthier MMA ecosystem here in Ontario. And that's the commitment for the future. So hopefully when we get to 2020, it's not 10 Canadians on one card, it's 12, and hopefully they don't compete against each other.
Just building off of the idea of building talent in the province and the country, when you see the reaction from the crowd of a guy like Cowboy and the Chance tonight, do you necessarily need to have that next GSP? I mean, we are already asking Marc-Andre Barriault this week, are you the next GSP? Do you necessarily need that? Can you have cards that are a little less on Canadian talent, knowing that the fans are more educated and are into some of the international stars?
No, you absolutely need a Canadian star. You absolutely need an Irish star, a British star, an Australian star. It doesn't matter. Like, we've got a business plan to take us all around the world, and it's much easier to execute upon that if you've got real bona fide stars that the local markets can kind of rally around. It would take a long time for, say, Barriault to become, quote unquote, the next GSP, but you need to have people that are being put in positions to allow us to build corporate sponsorships, to help sell tickets. I mean, yes, Cowboy is amazing, and there's only a few Cowboys, but, some of the top reactions or some of the levels of electricity that we hit tonight was because Canadians are fighting. So you definitely need it. Now, it doesn't mean that you build a card with exclusively Canadians. I mean, everywhere you go, people want a nice blend, a nice mixture of the local stars and some kind of global superstars, and that's what we tried to have tonight.
Hi there, just 3 questions for you. First, who or what sort of prompted this shift and this new focus on how you're growing talent?
Well, I mean, I think it's kind of part and parcel with our overall international development strategy. Who in particular? I mean, there's a few of us that talk about this quite a bit. I mean, if you think about, we have 42 events, half of them are overseas. If we're going to be successful in places like Argentina, in Singapore, I mean, we've got to have local athletes. Part of that is, ensuring that the base of athletes continues to grow. Part of that is being able to focus on the athletes once you have them. And so, I'll give you a good example. I mean, our work that we're doing with TKO, right, to ensure that we're sharing content, we're helping promote their events. They're obviously a Fight Pass partner. And so that type of example is something that we want to replicate in a bunch of different areas to ensure, again, that the health of the MMA ecosystem is alive and well.
Ottawa, not always on the tip of your tongue when you think entertainment, but they were electric tonight.
Yes.
Especially for that Cowboy fight. Do these sort of crowds make you want to come back sooner rather than later?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the crowd, you could tell, was pretty educated. They booed when they should have been booing, and they were up out of their seats when they should have been up out of their seats. The crowd and the support that we got all week while we were here definitely helps make the decision easier, but it's going to continue to happen. I mean, we're steadfast in our commitment to Canada, 3 events every year. We want to be in as many cities across the country as we can. We're always going to have a pay-per-view and a couple other fight nights, and that means we've got to look to other cities than Toronto, Vancouver, Calgary, and Edmonton. Ottawa, we were here 3 years ago, and we'll probably look to come sooner than another 3 years. So.
And last one, since you touched on it, I can't remember who, but one of the fighters mentioned a possible Vancouver card in July.
Yeah, Arjun did, I think, early on. Vancouver, we're strongly looking at for this year. We've got nothing to report at this time, and we don't really know what platform it's on either. I think he's been talking all week about it being a pay-per-view, and he's going to sell all the tickets. # 1 billion strong. Yeah, we don't have anything to share yet. It's a huge puzzle, right? Like, trying to figure out the cities and the dates that make sense, not in the context of what makes sense for Canada, but what makes sense for our overall event schedule. And things just change week in and week out.
How do you feel about Arjun and his self-promotion? Because he's putting himself, he's putting a lot of focus on himself.
Yeah.
Vancouver, India.
I like
getting paid what he's worth. Do you like that sort of mindset?
The spirit is great. I mean, why not? We don't have any other Sikh fighters in the UFC. To hear his corner, providing some guidance during the fight in Punjabi, that's pretty cool. It's also on our target, not necessarily for the short term to grow in sort of the subcontinent, but I think India's on our radar, and if he can help us get there, that's great. I mean, there's limits to what they should be doing, but we're always willing and able to assist athletes if they're going to commit to doing these types of things. And I know he had his open workout. He's very active on social media. He's galvanizing this community. He had the Minister of Defense, I think, is Minister of Defense, yeah. So a lot of support from him. So those types of things we really enjoy. We've got to be able to kind of harness it and work properly with it.
That's Arjun did say tonight. His contract is up this fight.
Oh, did he?
Again, you're no matchmaker, but with everything you just said about him being a UFC fighter, potentially opening doors in India, is it important for him to be kept around this organization? Do you feel?
I would say so. I mean, what's his record? 3-1 now.
Yeah.
He's 3-1. I think the record's sort of the first thing that happens, but it definitely helps that he fits an area of our international strategy. So I mean, again, yeah, it's not up to me, but it makes sense on paper.
You mentioned India being on the radar. Is that short term, long term? Is there any update there?
Longer term, probably. I mean, there's only so much we can do, kind of every quarter, every year. Our big push right now, I think, as all you guys know, is Russia and China. We've had 2 events in Russia in the last 7 months or so, Moscow and then St. Petersburg. In 10 months, we've opened up an office. We're localizing Fight Pass and all our content. We have a UFC channel that we just launched, like a linear channel, which is the only one that we've got anywhere in the world right now. And we'll be going back there twice a year. With respect to China, I mean, we're 3 or 4 weeks away from opening up the Shanghai Performance Institute, right? And that's a 90,000 square foot performance institute that's going to be the epicenter for MMA growth through Asia Pac. It's not necessarily devoted just to China. We're going to have athletes from North Asia, from Japan, Korea, China, Southeast Asia, and I'm sure all the Aussies are going to want to get up there too. So those are sort of more of our immediate focuses, but we've got plans. So.
And just coming back to Canada, I mean, I know we talked about Vancouver, and like you said, 3 cards for the year. Is there a time frame for the 3rd card? Would it be later in the year, closer to December? Or?
Well, I mean, even getting to the 2nd card, we obviously want to try to space them out as much as possible. So, I mean, how about summer and fall type of thing? I mean, that's kind of what we're aiming for. Canada can be tricky because we try not to have events in the summer because everyone here likes to spend time away from the cities in the summer, which, as a good Canadian, first to that line. The fall is tough too because the amount of hockey and basketball that happens in the country. So we're going to try to space it out as best we can, but we're semi-aiming for summer and fall. I know that's vague, but that's kind of all we got right now.
What were some of the lesser known markets? I thought Moncton was a really inspired place
to
hold an event. Yeah. So do you guys have your eyes on anything else? Any lesser known, cities that you'll think of immediately?
I mean, some of the smallest, we were in Saskatoon a couple of years ago. We've been in Halifax a couple times, Moncton. We're always sort of looking at Windsor, London, especially with the proliferation of some of the smaller events or promotions that are popping up, or the more frequent events, I should say, that are popping up. So we'll always have. There's only so many cities we can go to with pay-per-view, because we need the media market, you need the population. So we'll continue to look at that list and a few others.
Just to touch on that, has Hamilton come up in that conversation, because it has an arena, it has a fairly decent population?
So it's a good question, but what do you think? Like if we're going to Hamilton, maybe we should just be going to Toronto, right? It's very, very close. There's an ease in transportation. There's a lot of facilities and the infrastructure are there, but I think if we're going to come to this area of Southern Ontario, then it makes sense to go to Toronto.
Specific to this event, I'm curious in regards to the decision of not doing a public weigh-in, similar to other events, and more specifically to what we did in 2016.
Yeah.
Is that more so a limitation of having it out in Canada, not it being as accessible?
Yeah, part of it. I mean, it takes a few things to make sure that we can have a public weigh-in, a ceremonial weigh-in, and Fan Village and some other activities. It just couldn't fall into place for this one, unfortunately. It's the type of thing we never want to skip, but sometimes we just have to. I don't love it personally because I love just this whole kind of camaraderie of a weekend event, and you come, and it's Friday, and you get to see the fighters, and it's this whole kind of weekend experience, especially for the people that travel. But our number one priority is to make sure we have them in every city that we have an event. It just sometimes can't come together. All right, thanks guys. Thanks for your support.